Okay, so we've got sexual orientation, gender identity, queer, whatever we decide that means, however someone defines it for themselves if they are a queer person. Then we've got intersex, which is a differentiation or a variation in developmental anatomy. And then we've got A, which is asexual, which is a difference in how people experience sexual attraction, not necessarily something directly related to orientation, but we lump all of these together under one big umbrella. Why do we do that when they're all so different?
It's a big problem because they are all so different. But I think the people who are included in that umbrella are all, or potentially are all marginalized in some way or another and disadvantaged in some way or another. So from that point of view, from a kind of a human rights and equal access point of view.
Well, you're exactly right. And I'm going to just take what you've said and frame it in a different way. The common thread between all of these people is not what they are, because they are a bunch of different things: sexual orientation, gender identity, anatomy, philosophy, etc., etc. It's what they're not. They're not simultaneously at the same time cisgender. Cisgender, for those who don't know, the opposite of transgender, heterosexual, and also allosexual, the opposite of asexual, in case you didn't know. So if you're not all three of those things at the same time, then society sees you as being different. Because in society, we have this concept of normal, and I say normal is a dirty word, because if I have a group of people who I consider to be normal, those who are at the same time straight and cisgender and allosexual, then by definition, anyone who isn't all of those things at the same time must be
abnormal.
Abnormal. How does that word make you feel?
Awful. Because I also have my own big struggles with the concept of what normal is.
Abnormal is an ugly word.
Awful.
It's not an observation. You know, I can look at you, Shiv, and I can say, oh, you are wearing a pink scarf and a pink sweater, and that's an observation. It's an objective fact. It's something that I can see. But if I tell you that you are normal or abnormal, it's no longer an observation. It's a value judgment. Because what I'm actually speaking about is, what are you worth in society? How closely do you align with the societal norm of what is acceptable? And the further away you get from that, the more difficult it is for you to navigate the world. So I tell people, you can kind of conceptualize this as everyone's starting out with a blank slate of 100 points. As a human being, you're worth 100 points, right? And then we start looking at you and we figure out where we can take away points. So if your skin is not white, then we dock 10 points. Sorry for you. If you're not a man, then we take away 10 points. Sorry for you. If you're not from an upper middle class or higher socioeconomic status, then we take away 10 points. If English is not your first language, we take away 10 points. If you're not cisgender, we take away 10 points. If you're not straight, we take away 10 points. And at the end of it, what we're left with is an estimation of what people's value in society is. And those who have fewer points have less power, they have less respect. It becomes more acceptable to bully them or to harass them or to be violent towards them. Their voices are not heard as loudly, and can be very difficult for people who have 100 or close to 100 points on this hypothetical scale to understand the challenges that are faced by those who don't have all of the points. And certainly we can all relate to this in one or another way. I can relate to this because I'm a woman of queer experience, but you've said you have some struggles with the word normal, and certainly I'm sure people have made judgments against you because of who you are. Am I right?
Definitely. It's not every doctor who comes to work in pink every day and sequins, and yeah, definitely. It's people's concept of what normal is in a given area most certainly can impact on on that person's lived experience. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Now, you've led me down an interesting rabbit hole, and I hope you'll indulge me. You have a choice about the clothes that you wear to work every day, don't you?
I do.
So why don't
Yes,
you just choose to fit in?
because I really just can't. It's not me. It's literally impossible. I think if I had to go out somewhere dressed in beige, everyone I know would just collapse because they would think I'd been, I don't know, lobotomized. It's just not in me. I can't, I'm not, I just can't.
It's not comfortable for you.
It's so
You feel like you're
uncomfortable.
not
I
being
feel
true
like
to
a
yourself.
fraud. Totally. Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Exactly.
so you actively make a decision every day when you get up and get dressed to go to work. You decide, I'm not going to pretend to be someone I'm not just for the sake of fitting in, even if it
Yes.
would make my life a little bit easier. You don't want to make
Absolutely.
that part of you invisible.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So now let's think about a hypothetical patient from the LGBTQIA plus community who goes to a clinic or to a doctor or to a healthcare provider in order to access a service. And let's say, for example, that this is someone that we would look at and read as female, someone
Mm-hmm.
who's presenting as female, someone who we would see as a woman. If she goes in to this clinic or to this doctor's office, some of the questions that she might be asked are, do you have a boyfriend? Do you have a husband? Are you married? Is there a possibility that you might be pregnant? Are you on contraception? All these kinds of questions that we ask, we are actually making assumptions about this person. Now, let's assume that she doesn't have a boyfriend or a husband and isn't married to a man because, heavens forbid, she's queer or gay or lesbian and she's in a relationship with a woman. She can stand up and say, I'm certain that I'm not pregnant when she's asked that question. And the follow up to that will be, well, how are you so sure? And then she'll say, well, because I don't sleep with men, because I'm not attracted to men, because I'm lesbian, whatever it might be. Or she can say, you know what, I really don't think I'm pregnant, but if you have to test me anyway. She can pretend to fit in. Now, and I'll just put it out there that what I'm about to say might be a little bit sensitive or triggering for some people. So I'll just put that warning out before we discuss it. But this exact story was told to me by a colleague, a friend of mine, who's a professional nurse. She went in to go see her specialist gynecologist for a pap smear. And she was asked this question of, might you be pregnant? And how do you know that you're not? And she disclosed she doesn't sleep with men. And she was questioned by the specialist as to why. And she said, because I'm a lesbian. And she was on the bed in lithotomy position, feet up in the stirrups. And before her specialist did the pap smear for her, he did something that he termed a clitoral massage. I was horrified when I heard the story, because that is not a medical procedure that a doctor performs for a patient ever. She was assaulted by her healthcare provider, by a medical doctor, by a specialist medical doctor, in order to try and fix what he thought was wrong with her, namely that she was a lesbian. And it's absolutely horrifying. It's a story that shakes me every single time that I have to tell it. And this is true. This happened not just to a person on the street, but to someone who actually works in the healthcare professions herself, to be violated in such a way because she's seen as different.
Mm.
This is the very, very real risk that people in this LGBTQIA plus umbrella or community have when they stand up and say, you know what, I refuse to pretend to be what you expect of me, even if it makes my life safer. And for a lot of people, even those who do decide that they're going to play along or try to pretend or fly under the radar, there's the very real risk that they might be outed by other people in their community or family members or whatever else, and they face very, very real consequences. We live in South Africa where we have this horrific concept of corrective sexual assault or corrective rape.
Hmm.
or we try and fix people because we see them as broken, because we see them as abnormal. And this is what happens to people who are part of this community. Now, I have my own theories as to why this happens. I don't know, Dr. Gordon, if you have any insight or perspective as to where you think that sort of behavior comes from.
It's possible that the perpetrators of that kind of violence feel threatened by people who are different.
I agree with you 1,000%. I think that violence is a response to fear. I think it comes from fear, and I think it comes from a threat. In what way are the structures of this society threatened by lesbian women? What do you think?
Like materially, absolutely zero. But in terms of perception, I think hugely. But in reality, not at all.
So we have this concept that men are superior to women, and then we have a lesbian woman, someone who is, and we know sexual orientation is not a choice, but someone who is choosing to be with a woman instead of being with a man.
Yeah.
And that threatens the idea of male
Yeah.
supremacy, doesn't it? Right? Because if men are so much better, why would a woman ever be in a relationship with another woman? It doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
What about a gay man, a cisgender gay man? Is he a threat?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Why?
not actually, not in reality, but I think that men, I mean, it's quite narcissistic actually, but I think a lot of men feel threatened that gay men will want to like be with them or harass them or I don't know, have sex with them or whatever.
Right. The fear is that a gay man will treat a straight man
Yes.
in the same way that a straight man treats a woman.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the fear.
Yeah.
Right. What about a transgender man? Is he a threat?
Yes, definitely. But now I have to really think about why that. Well, maybe it's because now we're saying that anyone who wants to be a man can be a man, and it's not your, you know, you don't have to be born a man. I don't know. Is that it?
Yeah, this is someone who's assigned female at birth,
Yeah.
who's staking a claim to male privilege. How dare you? How dare you do such a thing? And what about a trans woman? Why is she threatening? I think that she's threatening because she was assigned male at birth and she's throwing away male privilege.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, this is the language that we're using. We all know it isn't a choice, it's a matter of identity. And we know that being socialized when people read you as male, if you are female and you identify as female, is actually quite traumatic.
Yeah.
But in the eyes of society, it's someone who's eschewing this male privilege, and it challenges this notion of male supremacy in society. So if we look at it like that, we can take a scenario of anyone under that LGBTQIA plus umbrella, and we can try and figure out what is threatening about them that we feel like it's okay to respond and to react towards people in this group or towards people who are marginalized on these axes with violence and abuse. Why somehow it's still acceptable in 2020. You know, it's very difficult now, especially in South Africa in 2020, to discriminate against anyone. We have a wonderful document called the Constitution. Constitution has a wonderful section called Section 9, and we prohibit discrimination against people on the basis of age, race, gender, disability, etc., 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 etc. But somehow, socially, we still feel like it's okay to pick on the queer folk and to pick on the LGBTQIA plus folk. Like somehow, it's still more difficult for us to stand up and say, no, that's not okay. To stand up and say, you know what, I am an ally, someone who will proudly wear a flag as you're doing, and I noticed that, and thank you. It's good to see some representation. In fact, since I'm recording this from my office, I will wave some of my flags.
Oh, what's that one? Oh, what's the purple
This is the
one?
asexual flag.
Okay, got you. There's
and
pride.
This is the rainbow flag.
Yes.
And then I have the trans flag.
Yes.
So I will set those down next to me for the duration of this conversation that we're having.
Awesome.
Just to say that representation is important, and it is important. It's important for us to designate ourselves as safe spaces because we can't take it for granted. You know, if you have 100 points on that checklist, if you are cisgender and you are straight and you are white, you are male and you are between the ages of 25 and 49 and you are part of that economically active sector in society, then you don't have to question before you go to a doctor's appointment, am I going to be safe? Am I going to be assaulted for who I am? Am I going to be asked humiliating questions in front of a waiting room full of patients? Because none of that's going to happen to you. But the further down you move on this checklist, the fewer points you have, the greater the risk is. And that's why it's important for us to be having this conversation, because that safety cannot be taken for granted. And because we make all of these assumptions and because we fixate on this concept of normalcy, and because we actually couch violence under that banner.